Hello, my name's Larry Mason. I'm a founding partner of Coach Talk Cafe, which was founded by Gabriela de Giglio. And I'm absolutely fascinated. I'm just fascinated by the thought that we're going to have a coaching group that is not only going to be diverse, international, but also allow us to express our different views on um, coaching. As an interesting aside, the term coaching came about in England when a university student needed to be tutored, and they would hire a coach or a buggy and a driver to bring them to the tutor, and then afterward they would pick them up and bring them back. So coaching has a very interesting story, the term coaching in of itself. And that's partly what I'm going to discuss today is the stories we have are so very important to our behaviors. Our stories begin with our environment, then they go into beliefs and skills, and onward up into becoming our identity of the I am. And for those that are fortunate enough, could go into a outside of ourselves to where we coaches want to help others outside of ourselves. I might be very comfortable with what I am and what I'm doing and how much I make, and that's fine. I'm retired. Yet I want to help other people. I want to guide others into understanding all the unknown knowns, which is a term meaning there's a lot that is known by very few. And those very few want to go out, for the most part, want to go out and explain to others how we can change and how we can grow and how we could thrive. And it's interesting that coaching um, is more or less a spinoff of neurolinguistic programming, and that the creators originally said that there was an interest in modeling people that were very skilled at what they did. And initially, Richard Bandler went to the University of Santa Cruz, ending up sharing or renting a space with a psychology professor. And in the professor's study, there was books and tapes on Fritz Perls, who created Gestalt therapy. Gestalt therapy is, um, in a manner which may or may not be the appropriate word, but it's symbolic modeling. Fritz would take something like a client who's having trouble with his mother, and then his client is talking about, well, he's sitting there having a chocolate milkshake, and his mother's having a vanilla milkshake, and then so Fritz might say something that, oh, so you're the chocolate milkshake. So if you're the chocolate milkshake, and then go on to, what modeling, what the symbology was between what occurred. So Richard Bandler eventually became better, from what people say, better than Fritz Perls. Fritz passed away, and then Richard Bandler got into a debate with a psychology professor and won, and just shocked everybody. And he was using Fritz Perls' methodology. So Richard Bandler was given the permission to set up a coaching class, to set up a class of his own, a training. And in the training, he would teach Gestalt therapy. Well, John Grinder, which is the other half of NLP, was then brought in. He was a linguistics professor, but he was also a psychology um, professor. And he was brought in to oversee and make sure that the training, make sure Richard Bandler was on track and stay with the program. So John Grinder apparently was so impressed that he began to model the linguistics and the um, body language of John of Richard Bandler. So in effect, this became the core of how the neuro linguistics and the programming. Richard Bandler was a computer programmer. He was interested in Euclidean geometry, very high mathematical. He earlier in his life was um, taught by a teacher who was actually a jet mechanic, but he ended up teaching physics, and he taught the students how to build a jet plane. So Richard Bandler was very rich in being able to see beyond um, the veil, if you will. And John Grinder modeled and mirrored him, and then they got into Virginia Satir, who's family therapy, and then they got into Milton Erickson, which was hypnotherapy, and they created what they referred to as the subjective experience. Um, Basically, what they refer to as the study of the structure of the subjective experience. One of the things that I'm fascinated with is, being that I'm a mathematics, very interested in mathematics, is Richard Bandler makes a comment that behaviors have positive intentions. However, intentions are points. They're very similar to the Euclidean theory, but it's like a period in space. It separates this from that. And the point doesn't really exist. The behavior, the intention, the thought that there's an intention, a positive intention behind the behavior can't be proven. Then they go into another line of studying what they refer to as presuppositions. And there's 16 basic presuppositions I don't have time to go into here. You can look them up. And in the interest of behaviors and why one behavior is so difficult with psychotherapy, that's difficult to resolve, they gleamed onto phobias. So they started modeling people that had phobias that they were able to overcome. So as they're modeling these people, this what they came out to was a phobia model. And in the phobia model, they were able to clear someone's phobia within 10 minutes, which pretty much put NLP on the map. It took it depending on how successful they were. There were comments of it take between 1 and 2 years of psychotherapy, and it's just with the NLP and knowing how this works, it gives coaches an ability to, um, shall I say, an example. I have a behavior I want to change, and the behavior, I understand. My coach told me the behavior has a positive intention. I said, okay, fine. So how can I, which they call a secondary gain. So the secondary gain, which is a positive intention, is more important than whatever the behavior is. So my dad, um, one day, his father came up to him and said, son, you're 17 years old. It's time for you to smoke. And so they had a smoke together. And my father became an avid smoker. And it was very difficult for my father to quit smoking for decades because he was a smoker because it made him a man, according to his father. Now, ultimately, the secondary gain, the positive intention, was actually overridden when he went to a medical doctor, and the medical doctor said, well, I got bad news for you. And my father said, okay, what's the bad news? He says, well, I tell you should stop smoking because it's destroying your health. But honestly, he said, at this point in your life, it won't make any difference. And my father said, thank you so very much. And he walked out and threw the cigarettes down. So it is possible to change our unconscious behaviors. And one of the cool parts that NLP developed is called a parts integration, and where the part is brought out, and I'll move back a little bit. You can see my DNA tie. So the part then is brought out onto, let's say, the non-dominant hand. So the non-dominant hand, like here, I say, okay, and then I take this and then I create some sort of an image. And let's say the image in this particular case is my grandfather. Well, curiously, I was told that I had my grandfather's temper. And I'm going like, great, at a very early age, really early age. And occasionally my father and I would get into an argument. Well, it wasn't necessarily a behavior I wanted to continue all the time, and I didn't know what to do with it. Not knowing NLP, for the most part, I maintain a level of, I could look at my father, I could use the wrong word with my father, and then we would get into this argument, and he said, oh, it's not your fault, it's your grandfather's temper. So let's say today I go to a coach and I said, hey, I've got this behavior I want to change. This, like, for some reason, I don't know. It's like, and it's, oh yeah, it's called a secondary gain. It's fine. So great. So I go like, okay, so I put it here. It's my grandfather. And I go like, hey, whatever. And we're talking. And then he explains to me why it's so important for me to protect my identity. And when I feel that I'm being um, victimized or hurt or something comes up and I go like, so it fires off, it triggers off my anger. And my anger is a great mechanism for telling the person to back off. And if necessary, I'll do whatever I have to back this person off. So I got a couple of choices. As I think most people are familiar with the fight flight response. The other side of it is I can just cocoon, or I can go into what I refer to as a chameleon. I can just kind of like hide, or just kind of like try to ignore everything and everyone, or I can try to leave. Well, let's say that I can't. Great. So now I look at this and I say, okay, your highest intention is protect me. And on the other side of it, this is my whole. So my highest intention is to accept your protection. Is there another way we can negotiate? Is there another way we can do this without the anger? I mean, you're no longer a 6-year-old child. You are now an adult. Can we come up with another methodology, another behavior, another belief system that's as good as and maybe a little bit better? And yeah, well, now that you mentioned it, yeah, it's no longer necessary for you to do this. So as things go, eventually, as I'm negotiating with this part, and this part says, yes, I will support the whole, the part will go underneath this hand, the whole, and then the practitioner can bring the hand into the heart and say, welcome home, I love you. The other side of it, the part may go the opposite direction and say, go to where it goes on top of the whole. And then you bring the whole in and you could say the same, welcome home. The difference is if this part says, okay, I'll give you the opportunity to try this out. Well, then the part is not totally 100% interested in giving up all of its authority. So it'll say, okay, I will bond with you. I will protect you in a different manner. The opposite is going like the part says, okay, fine, I'm kind of doing this anyway, and I think your idea of doing it a little differently is great, so I'll let you protect me for a while. And then it goes in, and then the whole then integrates and absorbs the part. So there's different YouTubes on it. There's different ways of doing this. It's one of the terms was parts integration. Another term is visual squash. And for this point, this is my session of introducing myself as an NLP trainer, a hypnotherapist, timeline therapy, which gets into Gestalt, and clean language, and some spiritual training I do with people. Blessings.